It was just another routine shift for Ethan Cole, until something beneath the machinery stopped him cold. A flicker of blue, barely visible under the metal press, caught his eye. He stepped closer, squinting through the dim light. That's when he saw her, a little girl, curled up in fear, trying not to be seen. When he reached out to help, she hesitated, then slowly emerged. As he gently pulled her to safety, her sleeve slipped back just enough to reveal a faint barcode tattoo on her wrist. Ethan froze. In that instant, he knew this wasn't just a lost child. Something was very wrong, and what he did next could mean everything. Before we unravel what happened, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. And if stories like this matter to you, hit that subscribe button. The day had started like any other. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the factory lot as Ethan made his way toward the entrance of the steel plant. At 47, his face carried the quiet history of someone who'd seen combat and survived life afterward. A Marine turned machine operator, Ethan had worked this same line for 8 years. His hands, tough and scarred, pushed open the door to the familiar scent of oil and steel. He clocked in for his 4 p.m. shift, just like always. The factory hummed with mechanical rhythm as he walked to the locker room, his boots echoing softly against the concrete. Inside, he changed into his worn orange uniform, pulled on his safety helmet, adjusted the visor, and caught his reflection in the dented locker mirror. The face staring back held more than age. It carried weight. Not the kind measured in years, but in what those years had taken and taught. He reminded himself, talk to Garrett before the office closed. That vacation request had been sitting on his mind too long. Ethan headed toward the front office, navigating the maze of piping and machinery like a man who knew every inch of this place by heart. He passed a few co-workers, nods exchanged, nothing more. That was how it went here. Respect in silence. When he reached his boss's office, Ethan paused. Through the narrow window, he saw Garrett locked in conversation with 2 strangers, men in tailored black suits who looked like they belonged in a courtroom, not a factory. Their stiff posture and clipped tone gave Ethan pause. Whatever was going on inside that room, it wasn't about steel. He hovered by the door for a minute, unsure whether to knock. Garrett finally noticed him. Their eyes met for a second. The door opened. "Something wrong, Ethan?" Garrett's tone was tight, like he didn't want to be bothered. Ethan cleared his throat. "No, sir. Just needed to talk. But it can wait." Garrett sighed, already half turning back inside. "Come see me later." He shut the door, leaving Ethan standing alone, his request forgotten again. Disappointed, Ethan turned and headed to his station at the far end of the plant, the heavy machinery zone. Most avoided it if they could. Too noisy. Too dangerous. But Ethan preferred it that way. Here, he could focus. No distractions, just the hiss of hydraulics and the grind of metal shaping metal. His job? Operating one of the hydraulic stampers, massive machines that could crush, bend, and mold steel to precise specifications. It was work that demanded strength, patience, and precision. In a strange way, it reminded him of his time in the military. Everything mattered. Every movement counted. He had no idea that something hiding beneath one of those machines was about to test everything he thought he knew about danger and about himself. As Ethan approached his workstation, he scanned the familiar setup, the massive hydraulic press towering before him, already in motion. He slid down his face shield, the clear plastic his only barrier against the flying sparks and shavings that came with every shift in this high-risk zone. The rhythmic clank of steel and hiss of hydraulics formed a mechanical symphony he knew by heart. His hands moved with muscle memory, guiding cold steel sheets into position, activating the press, removing each molded piece with steady precision. Hours could pass this way, bent over raw metal, his body working, his mind drifting. That's when something disrupted the flow. Near the broken laser cutter, he caught the faintest flicker of motion. Quick, subtle, almost nothing. He blinked. Was it fatigue? He'd skipped his usual coffee and was already feeling the lag. But then it happened again. A shadow shifting where it shouldn't be. His spine straightened. Whatever it wasn't part of the machine. But Ethan couldn't just abandon his post, not without covering the press. One mistake here could cause serious damage, maybe even injury. He scanned the floor. Corey was nearby, weaving through the machines. "Corey!" Ethan called, waving to catch his attention over the roar of steel. Corey, a redhead in his early 30s and one of the more dependable guys on the team, jogged over. "What's up? Can you watch my press for a few? I think something's off with the CNC unit again. Andrew mentioned it earlier." "No problem," Corey nodded. "You good for 10? "Yeah, shouldn't take more than that," Ethan replied, already moving. "Thanks, I owe you one." Crossing the factory floor, Ethan's pulse began to climb. He wasn't sure what he expected, but the flicker hadn't felt like a malfunction. It felt human. As he neared the machine, he checked his surroundings. Everything was noise and motion, but his focus tunneled in. He circled the laser cutter slowly, making sure it was powered down, then crouched to inspect the shadowed collection area underneath. It was a tight, dark space, full of scrap shavings and metal dust. Most workers barely looked under here, no reason to, no time. But Ethan looked, and what he saw made his breath hitch. There, tucked into the corner beneath the machine, was a child. At first, his brain refused to process it. Just a trick of the light, surely. But as his eyes adjusted, the truth sharpened into focus. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, huddled against the wall, trying to disappear. Her long-sleeved blue sweater was streaked with grime, her jeans dusty and torn, her hair pulled back into a frazzled ponytail. She was trembling. His mind raced. How had she gotten here? Who was she? Why wasn't anyone looking for her? "Hey," he said softly, careful not to startle her. He lowered his voice, gentler now. "It's okay. You're safe." But she didn't respond. She just stared at him with wide eyes and shrank deeper into the shadows. Ethan froze. He realized how he must look, huge, helmeted, wrapped in gear, face obscured behind a plastic visor. Slowly, deliberately, he stood up and lifted his shield, exposing his face. The factory lights were glaring after the darkness beneath the machine, and he blinked, adjusting. "It's all right," he repeated, voice low and steady. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl didn't move, but she also didn't run. And that was the moment Ethan knew this wasn't some lost kid who wandered in by mistake. Something deeper, something darker was going on. The hum of the machines never stopped, a constant roar around them. Ethan stayed crouched near the laser cutter, voice calm but firm. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, keeping his distance. "But you can't stay down there. It's dangerous. There's sharp metal and dust. It's not safe for kids." The girl didn't move. Her eyes flicked nervously from Ethan to the shadows around her. He saw the fear in them, but also something else, something far more unsettling for a child that young. It was the kind of exhaustion you don't earn from play. It was survival. Ethan took a slow breath, steadying himself. "My name's Ethan," he said gently, lowering his voice to meet the stillness in her. "Can you tell me yours?" The girl didn't speak. Instead, she raised a small finger to her lips in a quiet plea for silence. That single gesture froze Ethan. This wasn't just fear. She wasn't lost. She was hiding. He leaned in slightly, now whispering, "Are you scared of someone?" She gave the faintest nod. Ethan glanced around. No one nearby. The machines were too loud for anyone else to hear them anyway. "It's just us," he said softly. "You're safe now. You don't have to stay under there." The girl didn't answer right away, but her gaze lingered on Ethan's face, searching him for something. Truth, safety, maybe even hope. Then, inch by inch, she began to move. Slowly, carefully, she crawled out from beneath the machine. "There you go," Ethan murmured, trying to offer a reassuring smile. "That's better." Now in the light, Ethan could see her clearly. She was small, maybe 7 or 8. Dirt smudged her jeans, and the sleeves of her blue sweater were streaked with steel dust. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and her eyes, still wary, watched every move he made. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anna," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "That's a beautiful name." He crouched again but kept his hands by his sides. "Anna, can you tell me why you were hiding?" She glanced around, then muttered, "I'm scared." Ethan tried to piece it together. Maybe the noise, maybe she'd wandered in without anyone noticing. But something didn't fit. Her clothes were dusty, sure, but they weren't ragged. Her hair tie wasn't frayed. She didn't look like a child living on the street. So how had she ended up here? "Where are your parents?" he asked. "Did you come here with someone?" At the mention of parents, Anna's expression changed. She looked confused. Then, slowly, she shook her head. Ethan's concern deepened. "Okay," he said gently. "We can't stay here. It's too dangerous. Let's go to the front office, all right? It's quiet there. They can help us figure out where you belong." He reached for her hand, and for a moment she let him. But as he took a step forward, she yanked back suddenly. "No!" Anna gasped. Her eyes widened in panic. "I don't want to go back to the men." Ethan froze. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. "What men?" he asked, voice suddenly tight, but Anna didn't answer. In the blink of an eye, she tore free and bolted, darting between machines, weaving through gaps only a child could fit through. Her blue sweater vanished into the blur of iron and motion. "Anna!" Ethan shouted, trying to follow, but she was already gone, lost in the chaos of the factory floor. His heart pounded. Every spinning blade, every moving part suddenly looked like a threat. He couldn't chase her blindly. That would only scare her more, or worse, push her into danger. He needed help, fast. Without wasting another second, Ethan turned and headed toward the boss's office. If anyone had the power to shut things down and coordinate a search, it was Garrett. As he moved down the hall, the clamor of the factory faded behind him. The hum of machines gave way to the quieter noise of office printers and distant phones. Ethan reached Garrett's door and stopped. The 2 men in suits were still inside, deep in conversation with his boss. They looked out of place in every way. Sharp suits, stiff posture, eyes that didn't belong in a factory. He raised his hand to knock, then paused. A voice inside caught his attention. "The girl," one of the men said. The words were low, but Ethan heard them, and suddenly, everything made sense in the worst possible way. Ethan froze, his hand hovering inches from the door. Did they just say, "the girl"? Could they be talking about Anna? He leaned in, trying to catch more, but the low voices mixed with the factory's constant drone made it impossible to hear the rest. Then, movement. Chairs scraped inside the office. Ethan stepped back quickly, pretending to study a safety poster on the wall, just as the door swung open. The 2 men in suits emerged first, silent, stone-faced, and focused straight ahead. Not a glance in Ethan's direction. Their shoes, polished, out of place on the concrete floor, clicked as they disappeared down the corridor. Mr. Garrett followed, his expression tight, jaw clenched. "It's been a pleasure doing business with you," Garrett said stiffly. "I'll come check the cargo in a few minutes." Cargo? Ethan's eyes followed them until they turned the corner. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Then Garrett turned to him. "Ethan," he barked. "Inside. Now." Ethan followed him in, tension thick in the air. The contrast was immediate. Inside the office, it was all paper and coffee, the usual clutter of a long shift. The factory's noise dulled behind the closed door. Garrett turned to face him, and there was something in his look that went beyond irritation. Distrust. "You been standing there the whole time?" he asked, voice low and sharp. Ethan met his eyes. "No, sir, I just came." "Never mind that. What do you want?" The words were clipped, cold. Garrett glanced at the clock, past 5 p.m., closing time for most. Ethan hesitated. Should he mention the girl now? Would Garrett even believe him? Something about the men in suits, about the way Garrett had spoken, about cargo, didn't sit right. So Ethan chose caution. "I wanted to confirm my time off request," he said, keeping his voice steady. "I've been planning a trip to Colorado to visit my sister and her kids. She's been having a rough time, and I'd like to be there for her." Garrett's scowl deepened. "You interrupted my meeting. For that?" But then he seemed to remember who he was speaking to. Ethan, the dependable one. He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Fine, approved," he muttered. "Now, unless there's something else, get back to your station." He paused, locking eyes with Ethan. "And don't come back here today. If you need anything, speak to admin." Ethan nodded. "Yes, sir." He left the office quickly, but his mind was spinning. Anna was still out there somewhere in the factory, and whatever Garrett and those men were discussing, it wasn't normal business. Something was being hidden. He couldn't pretend this didn't happen, but he also couldn't ask questions out in the open. Not here, not now. Back in the corridor, the factory's roar greeted him again. Sparks flew in the welding area, boots echoed down metal walkways, and the press machines thundered in steady rhythm. No sign of Anna. The admin staff? They were overwhelmed on a good day, and now office hours were over. They'd probably brush him off like Garrett just did. That left one option: security. If he was going to find Anna and get answers, that's where he had to go. With renewed focus, Ethan headed toward the back entrance of the factory, weaving through workstations and rows of machines, eyes scanning every corner. Somewhere in this maze of noise, steel, and shadows, a frightened girl was hiding, and someone didn't want her found. Ethan's pace slowed as he reached the packaging area, then stopped cold. Up ahead, near the far end of the factory floor, were the same 2 men he'd seen earlier in Garrett's office. But now they weren't just standing around. They were moving with precision, scanning every corner, every shadow, every possible hiding spot. Ethan watched their movements carefully. This wasn't curiosity. This was a coordinated search. And suddenly, Anna's words echoed in his mind. "I don't want to go back to the men." His pulse quickened. It had to be them. Staying low and out of sight, Ethan slipped behind a stack of boxed materials. He couldn't risk being spotted. Not now. Not when the pieces were starting to come together. He moved quickly toward the security post until a flash of blue caught the edge of his vision. There, just feet away, was Anna. She was crawling beneath another machine, one just like before, but this one wasn't broken. It was live, running. Ethan's heart jumped. "Anna!" he called, hurrying forward, trying to keep his voice urgent but calm. "You can't go under there. It's dangerous." Anna froze, startled. She turned, eyes wide, her tiny body half swallowed by the dark cavity beneath the active machinery. Sparks cracked overhead. The hum of hydraulics continued. Ethan crouched next to her, voice soft now. "Listen to me. That machine's running. If something falls, if anything shifts, you could get hurt. Badly. You have to come out. Please." For a long second, she didn't move. Her lip trembled. Then, in the smallest voice, she asked, "Can you help me?" The question hit him like a gut punch. "Help you how, Anna?" he asked, barely above a whisper. His eyes searched hers, but she didn't answer. Instead, her gaze shifted to something behind him. Ethan turned. The two men, still searching, still closing in, and that's when it all clicked. Anna wasn't just scared of being lost in a loud factory. She was running from them, and whatever she'd been through, whatever that barcode tattoo on her arm meant, was connected to them. "Okay," Ethan said quietly, firmly. "We're getting you out of here, somewhere safe. Just stay close to me." She nodded. As Ethan helped her up, her oversized sleeve slid back, and he saw it again, that same barcode tattoo on her wrist. He brushed it gently with his thumb. It didn't smear. It wasn't a sticker. It was real, permanent ink on a child's skin. His stomach turned. He didn't need explanations. His instincts, sharpened by years in the military, told him everything he needed to know. Whatever this was, it wasn't right. "Anna, we're leaving," he said. But before she could move, her body tensed. Her eyes went wide with terror. Footsteps, fast, closing in. "There she is!" a gruff voice shouted from behind. Ethan spun around. The men were coming straight for them. Without thinking, he moved in front of Anna, shielding her. The taller one reached her first, grabbing her arm roughly, yanking her away from Ethan. "Hey!" Ethan barked, stepping forward, fury rising in his chest. "Let go of her!" His voice was nearly drowned out by the factory's roar, but his intent was unmistakable. The other man, the one in glasses, stepped between them, blocking Ethan's path. His stance was firm, his face blank. Behind the glare of his glasses, Ethan couldn't even see his eyes. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded. "Are you family? Who does she belong to?" The man's voice was calm, calculated. "We're her uncles," he said without blinking. "This is a family matter. You should mind your own business." But Ethan didn't move. "I saw you in Garrett's office earlier," he said. "I don't believe you. I need to confirm this, now. You're not going anywhere with her until I speak to him." The man didn't budge. Just then, over the shoulder of the suited man, Ethan saw movement. Mr. Garrett heading toward the exit. Their eyes met, and Garrett paused. For the first time, something like guilt or fear flickered in his expression. He picked up speed, walking toward them. "What's going on here?" Garrett asked sharply, looking between Ethan, the men, and the girl. But before Ethan could answer, the man in glasses spoke first. The man in glasses stepped forward, speaking before Ethan could get a word in. "Just a family matter, sir," he said smoothly. "We're taking our niece home." His tone was practiced, almost too polished, but Ethan caught the slight tension behind the words. Garrett gave a quick nod, then turned to Ethan. His face was calm, composed, but Ethan noticed a familiar twitch in the corner of his eye. He'd seen it before. It was the same tell Garrett showed when under pressure. "It's all right, Ethan," the boss said evenly. "I know these men. The girl belongs with them. They came in together earlier, left her in the administration office. She must have wandered off while staff got distracted. You know how kids are." Ethan said nothing, but his jaw tightened. The story didn't sit right. He looked at Anna. She wasn't just scared, she was silently begging him not to let them take her. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes wide. Between those two tall men, she looked even smaller. Garrett's tone shifted, firm now. "You've been off the floor long enough. You can't just leave Corey running the press on his own. And didn't you have a broken machine to check? Get back to work, now." Ethan hesitated, the knot in his gut tightening. But under Garrett's glare, he gave a reluctant nod. As the two men led Anna toward the loading zone, she looked back at him again and again. Her blue sweater fluttered slightly as she walked. Every backward glance, another silent cry for help. They passed through the large roll-down gate at the far end of the factory, disappearing into the loading area. Ethan just stood there, frozen. The clatter of machinery faded into the background, his thoughts drowning out everything else. The tattoo. Anna's fear. Garrett's scripted response. It all felt wrong. Then he made a choice. Turning on his heel, Ethan jogged back to his workstation. Corey was still there, manning the press. He looked up, surprised at Ethan's return. "Hey," Ethan said, gripping his shoulder. "I need a bit more time. Can you hold it down just a little longer? Please." Corey blinked. Yeah. Everything okay?" "I hope so," Ethan muttered. "I really hope so." Without another word, he headed back toward the coiling gate. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from resolve. Job or not, he had to know what was happening. That girl wasn't safe. As he passed through the gate, the heavy air of the factory gave way to the chill of night. Outside, the loading dock was flooded with harsh white lights, casting long shadows between the parked trucks. Ethan moved with quiet precision, instincts from his Marine days kicking in. He used the trucks and crates as cover, keeping a low profile as he scanned for Anna. Near one of the trucks, he spotted Garrett. The boss was speaking to one of the suited men. Their exchange was brief, too brief for casual conversation. Then Garrett approached a large container truck. Its rear doors were open, but from Ethan's angle, the interior was nothing but darkness. Garrett leaned inside, inspected something, then stepped back and gave a nod. "The cargo's ready. All good," Ethan heard him say. That word, cargo, sent a chill through him. Then came the part that made Ethan's blood run cold. The suited man reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Garrett took it with obvious caution, glancing around like he knew what he was doing was meant to stay hidden. Ethan ducked behind a nearby forklift as Garrett opened the envelope. It wasn't cash. It wasn't paperwork. It was a key. A small, glinting key that Garrett examined like it meant everything. Behind him, the man in the suit closed and latched the container doors without a word. He then climbed into the cab of the truck. The engine roared to life, the sound bouncing off concrete walls like thunder in a tunnel. Ethan listened, heart thudding, as the two men exchanged a final few words. He only caught fragments. Switch, wait, confirmation. Then the truck began to move, but not in the direction Ethan expected. Not toward the main road, not toward the delivery route. It was heading somewhere else entirely. The truck didn't head for the exit. Instead, it turned, rolling into a separate parking lot beyond the loading zone, a quiet area packed with identical trucks. It stopped. The engine cut off. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Why park there? Why mix it with other trucks unless they were waiting for something? He scanned the area, debating his next move. Follow the truck or keep his eyes on Garrett? A moment later, Garrett made the choice for him. The factory boss, now holding the envelope with the strange emblem, slipped away from the loading dock and headed toward the back of the building, where the lights were dimmer, the noise thinner, and few workers ever went. Ethan followed. His movements were silent, measured. Years of combat training made him a ghost in the shadows as he tailed Garrett through the narrow alleys behind the factory. Then he saw it. Garrett crouched by a section of concrete wall that looked completely ordinary. But then, with practiced precision, he revealed a hidden compartment. A disguised panel in the structure peeled back to reveal a trapdoor. Ethan's eyes widened. From inside, Garrett pulled out a heavy, reinforced metal suitcase, and then he used the key, the very one from the envelope. The latch clicked open. Garrett flipped the lid. Stacks of cash, crisp, band-wrapped, clean. Ethan had never seen that much money in one place, and that's when he stepped out. "Mr. Garrett," he said, voice steady, eyes locked on the suitcase. "What's going on?" Garrett spun around, the blood draining from his face. He slammed the case shut, but it was too late. Ethan had seen everything. For a moment, the only sound was the low rumble of distant machinery and the rapid breathing between the two men. "What the hell are you doing here?" Garrett hissed, his voice cracking with panic. "You should be at your station." Ethan didn't flinch. "I saw the envelope, the key, that cash, and those men with that little girl." He took a step closer. "What's really happening here, boss? Because none of this looks like business as usual." Garrett's face hardened. His mask of authority snapped back into place. "You're in over your head, Ethan. This has nothing to do with you. Go back to work and forget what you saw, if you know what's good for you." But Ethan stood his ground. She was terrified. Who were those men? Where were they taking her? For a second, Garrett said nothing. Then, something shifted in his expression. Resignation, maybe. He reached back into the suitcase and pulled out a thick stack of bills. "Look," he said, voice low. "This is your cut for staying quiet. There's more where that came from. Just walk away. Forget the girl." He held the money out like a lifeline. But Ethan's eyes didn't move to the cash. They stayed locked on Garrett's. "No," he said, the word cutting through the air like a blade. He stepped back. "I'm not for sale. That girl needs help, and whatever this is, it ends now." Garrett's face twisted in rage. The bills slipped from his hand, scattering across the cold ground. Then his hand went to his pocket. Ethan didn't need to see more. He knew the move. He'd seen it 100 times before. Garrett was calling reinforcements. Without a second of hesitation, Ethan turned and ran. His boots thundered against the concrete, each step fueled by adrenaline and fury. He tore through the loading zone, mind racing faster than his feet. The meetings, the code words, the envelope, the barcode tattoo, the fear in Anna's eyes, the money. It wasn't just shady. It was a system, a pipeline, and Anna was cargo. He sprinted into the truck lot. The vehicle was still there, parked between others, dark, silent, but ready. Ethan ducked behind a container, breathing hard, his heart pounding in his ears. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and with trembling fingers, dialed 911. The call connected. 911, what's your emergency? Said a calm voice on the line. Ethan ducked behind another truck, eyes locked on the vehicle where Anna had last been taken. He took a breath. Then he spoke. Through the line, Ethan kept his voice low and urgent. "This is Ethan Cole," he said. "I'm at Post Falls Steelworks on Industrial Drive. There's a child trafficking situation happening right now. 2 men in suits have taken a young girl, possibly more. I believe my boss is involved. Please send help immediately." "Sir, can you give me more details?" the dispatcher asked. "I don't have much time," Ethan replied, eyes scanning the parking lot as he approached the edge. "The girl's name is Anna. She has a barcode tattoo on her arm. The men are driving a container truck. It's in the back lot beyond the loading zone. Please, hurry." "We're dispatching units now," the voice on the line assured him. "Stay with me if you can." "I can't," Ethan said, already moving. "I need to try to stop them before they disappear. Just get here fast." He ended the call, slid his phone into his pocket, and broke into a cautious jog. The lot was dark in places, illuminated only by flickering floodlights. The truck was still there, right where he'd last seen it. But now, its back doors were open. Ethan moved silently, weaving between rows of trucks, keeping low and hidden. As he drew closer, he heard voices, low, harsh, and angry, coming from the neighboring truck. "Stay quiet and get inside, or do you want another shot?" The voice, cold and familiar, belonged to the man in glasses. Then came a soft whimper. "Anna." Ethan's jaw clenched. That was it. He couldn't wait any longer. He wasn't armed. He was outnumbered. But he had to do something, anything, to buy time until the police arrived. He took a breath, stepped out from behind the truck, and raised his voice. "Let her go!" The words rang through the night like a gunshot. Both men turned, caught off guard. Anna, halfway into the truck, froze, her eyes locked onto Ethan, wide with fear and hope. The tension snapped taut. The man in glasses stepped forward, his face twisted in fury. "You're making a mistake," he growled. "Walk away, now." "I can't do that," Ethan said. "Let the girl go. The police are already on their way." At that, the men exchanged a glance. The one gripping Anna's arm tightened his hold, making her cry out. "You're bluffing," he hissed. "I'm not." Ethan's voice didn't shake. "You've got seconds left. It's over." And then, as if summoned, the wail of sirens began to rise in the distance, faint at first, then louder, closer. The color drained from the men's faces, and in that one heartbeat of hesitation, Anna ran. She yanked her arm free and sprinted toward Ethan, her oversized sweater flapping behind her. "Ethan!" she cried out, voice breaking. He rushed forward and caught her, one arm shielding her, his body between her and the men. "It's okay," he said, voice soft. "You're safe now." But the men weren't done. The man in glasses lunged. Ethan pushed Anna gently behind him. "Go!" he shouted. "Get inside a truck. Lock the doors." Anna hesitated, then ran. The first man swung wildly. Ethan ducked, then drove his fist into the man's gut. He dropped with a groan. The second man charged, but Ethan turned and used his momentum against him, slamming him into a parked trailer and sending him sprawling. Sirens now blared overhead. Flashing red and blue lights lit up the edge of the parking lot. Police cars roared in, tires screeching, doors flying open. "Police! Freeze!" an officer shouted. The two men tried to flee. One scrambled toward the truck, but it was too late. Floodlights hit them full force as 6 officers moved in, weapons drawn. The men raised their hands. It was over. Ethan took a breath, his hands still balled into fists, his chest heaving. "There's a girl in one of the trucks," he called out. "She's safe, but she needs help." One of the officers peeled away, heading toward the cab Anna had locked herself in. Ethan watched, chest still tight, as the officer gently coaxed her out. She emerged slowly, shaken but alive. Her eyes found Ethan's, and in that glance, full of exhaustion and silent gratitude, he knew he'd done the right thing. As Anna was led to safety, Ethan turned toward one of the officers and said, "There's more," Ethan said, his voice urgent. "My boss, Garrett, he's involved too. He's at the back of the factory. I saw him with a suitcase full of cash." The officer's face hardened. "We'll check it out. Can you show us?" Ethan was about to lead them when his eyes caught a sleek black car pulling out from a side exit behind the factory. "That might be him," he said quickly, pointing. "He's trying to get away." The officer snapped into action, radioing the update. "Vehicle leaving the rear lot. Suspect may be fleeing. Stand by for plate." "Do you know the license number?" he asked. Ethan nodded, rattling it off from memory. He'd seen Garrett park in the same spot for years. The officer repeated it to dispatch, and the chase was on. But in that moment, amidst flashing lights and swirling police, Ethan felt something small and warm press into his hand. He looked down. Anna, her fingers curled around his, her eyes full of silent gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. "You're safe now," he said. "It's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. A second group of officers approached. One of them, a man in plain clothes with a worn badge clipped to his belt, stepped forward. His voice was calm, but carried weight. "Mr. Cole?" he asked. "Detective Ramirez. We need to get your statement. Let's move somewhere quieter." Ethan nodded and glanced down at Anna, who gripped his hand tighter. He gave her a reassuring smile and silently promised not to leave her side. They walked to a quieter corner of the lot, away from the flashing lights. There, Ramirez crouched to Anna's level, his stern face softening. "Hi, Anna," he said gently. "You're safe now. We're going to take care of you, okay? Anna nodded, still holding on to Ethan. Then Ramirez stood and turned to Ethan. You were right. That tattoo, it's a known trafficking mark. These two men are part of a Russian ring we've been tracking for months. Ethan's stomach turned, a chill running through him. He looked at Anna, so small, so silent, and saw not just a frightened girl, but a survivor. They target vulnerable children, Ramirez continued quietly, usually ones with minimal supervision, easier to isolate, easier to move. He turned back to Anna. We're taking you to the station, Anna. Your grandmother's already been contacted. She's on her way. Anna's eyes lit up. Grandma? She whispered. Ramirez nodded, offering a small smile. Yes, she's been looking for you ever since you went missing in Spokane. Ethan's heart clenched as he pictured the elderly woman searching for her granddaughter, never giving up. She was taken from her yard, Ramirez explained. Her grandmother was inside and didn't notice in time. By the time anyone realized, they were already gone. Ethan stared at Anna, now understanding the depth of what she'd survived. What happens next? He asked. We'll need both of your statements, Ramirez replied. But this may be the break we've needed. Your actions tonight didn't just save Anna, they could take down the entire network. As they prepared to leave, Anna tugged on Ethan's hand. Will you stay with me? She asked softly. He looked to Ramirez, who gave a silent nod. Of course, Ethan said, crouching beside her. I'm not going anywhere. They rode in the back of a patrol car together. The lights outside blurred past the window as the quiet hum of police radio filled the air. Then came a voice over the radio. Suspect apprehended, 800 meters from factory perimeter, large suitcase recovered, possible laundering. Bringing him in now. Ethan looked up. Ramirez turned from the front seat and nodded. They got him, he confirmed. Your boss, just like you said, with the money. Ethan exhaled, the tension slowly unwinding from his body. Garrett, so smug, so untouchable, was now in custody, and the factory's secrets were finally being dragged into the light. What does this mean? Ethan asked, lowering his voice so Anna wouldn't hear. Ramirez rubbed his forehead. It means we're no longer dealing with just trafficking. If we can link that cash to offshore accounts or shell companies, this turns into something much bigger. They drove in silence for a moment. The streets of Post Falls were quiet, unaware of the storm that had been uncovered in their midst. Ethan stared out the window, lost in thought. When he'd clocked in that afternoon, it was just another shift. Now, everything had changed. He felt Anna's hand slip into his again. He looked at her, and for the first time that night, she smiled. He gave her hand a squeeze, silently vowing he wouldn't let this end here. There were more kids out there, more secrets, and more people who needed someone to speak up. Tonight, he had made a choice, and it had made all the difference.